Ini, Pak.
I do hope you are fine.
Pretty good, thanks.
Thank you very much for taking your valuable time to join and deliver a speech representing the Honorable the Minister of Environment and Forestry, Professor Dr. Insinyur Siti Nurbaya Bakar, MC, in our annual academics event. Thank you very much for taking your valuable time to Honorable Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan from University Teknologi Mara of Malaysia, Environment and Forestry, Professor Dr. Insinyur Siti Nurbaya Bakar. Professor Hartini Saripan for Universitas Teknologi Mara Malaysia. Belum rabu. Baik. The Honorable Professor Ildiko Barda PhD, the Associate Professor of Hungary. Belum. Ya. The Honorable Professor Birchwatch, the Associate Professor of OP Jindal Global University. Belum. Aku nggak bisa lihat itu. Nggak bisa. Tuh, Budita. Honorable Dr. Ali Mazhar, SHMH. How are you today, sir?
Alhamdulillah, assalamualaikum, Prof.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I do hope you are fine.
Alhamdulillah, thanks.
Thank you very much for your availability to share your valuable knowledge this morning.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Martita M. Hum. And we are very happy today to meet all speakers and also all participants. Now we are going to start this conference. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 5th International Conference on Indonesian Legal Studies with the theme Advancing Legal Discourse of Environmental Ethics and Political Ecology in the Contemporary Era by Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang. I'm your host, Martinda Intan.
And I'm Imam Adi, and we are very happy to be able to meet all the participants. And on behalf of Universitas Negeri Semarang, we would like to say thanks for your participation in this event.
Before we begin this conference, first let's say thanks to Allah who has been giving us guidance, mercy, and healthy so we can participate in this event without any obstacle. Ladies and gentlemen, now allow me to welcome the Honorable Rector of Universitas Negeri Semarang and also all of the executive boards in UNES, and the Honorable the Dean of Faculty of Law, the Honorable the Fellowship of the Dean of Faculty of Law in Indonesia.
And please give a warm welcome to our invited speakers. The first one, keynote speakers, the Director General of Environmental and Forestry Law Enforcement, Dr. Rasio Ridosani, SSI MCom MPM. Welcome. The second one, Associate Professor Chaya Bardwaj from OP Jindal Global University, India. The next one, welcome to Associate Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan from University Teknologi Mara, Malaysia.
And also good morning to Associate Professor Ildiko Barta, PhD from University of Debrecen, Hungary. And last but not least, good morning to Dr. Ali Mazhar, SHMH from Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia.
To begin the opening ceremony, I would like to request to all participants to listen the national anthem of Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Indonesia Raya.
Mars Universitas Negeri Semarang.
Universitas Negeri Semarang menjulang setinggi angkasa, membangun insan yang akademis, berkarya segala daya guna, berlandaskan nilai Pancasila, Undang-Undang Dasar 45, pilar-pilar perguruan tinggi sebagai dasar pengamilannya. Majulah Universitas Negeri Semarang di tengah derap pembangunan, mendidik putra bangsa menjadi cemerlang untuk Indonesia tercinta, berwawasan nilai konservasi, bereputasi internasional, melimpah berkat rahmat, semoga ia selalu jaya. Universitas Negeri Semarang menjulang setinggi angkasa, membangun insan
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the welcoming speech from the Dean of Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang. For Dr. Rodia, SPD SHMSI, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Salam, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan, salam Pancasila. In the name of God, the most beneficent and the most merciful, my peace, mercy, and blessing of God be upon you. Dear colleges, professors, lecturers, researchers, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang, and the organizing committee, I would like to express my sincere gratitude and welcome you to the 5th International Conference on Indonesian Legal Study 2022 Universitas Negeri Semarang. The International Conference is an annual agenda of the Faculty of Law Universitas Negeri Semarang. Every year, ICLs always present a different theme according to the current issue. The year's 2022 theme is Advancing Legal Discourse of Environmental Ethics and Political Ecology in the Contemporary Era. In this opportunity, I honorably welcome our keynote and invited speakers. Professor Dr. Insinyur Nurbaya Bakar, MSc, the Minister of Environment and Forestry Affairs, whose attendance is represented by Director General of Environmental and Forestry Law Enforcement, Dr. Rasio Ridho Soni, MCom, MPM. Professor Dr. Fatur Rahman, Director of Universitas Negeri Semarang. Associate Professor Chaya Birchwatch, Jindal Global University of India. Associate Professor Indiko Barta, PhD, University of Debrecen, Hungary. Associate Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan, University Teknologi Mara, Malaysia. Associate Professor Dr. Ali Masyar, Universitas Negeri Semarang. I hope the 5th ICL 2022 will be able first to achieve its objective of providing an effective forum for academicians, researchers, and practitioners to advance research, science, and knowledge for humanity and environment. Second, to strengthen the development of legal studies from a worldwide perspective. It is also to empower the independent learning in independent campus or MBKM policy. It is pleasing to note that the agenda of this conference covers wide range to exciting topics related to all theoretical and practical aspects, but not limited include all areas in environmental studies, environmental law, environmental ethics, and political ecology, but also philosophy of law, law economy, and sustainable development, constitutional law, administrative law, criminal law, civil law, etc. Finally, my deepest gratitude goes to the advisor board, organizing committee, speakers, institution, and participants who have directly and indirectly supported the success of this conference. And especially many thanks for Asosiasi Pengajar Hukum Keperdataan, Lecturer Association of Civil Law, that co-host these events. The committee has organized a passionate scientific conference and is working hard to present highly respected and international notarized speaker to lead it. Although we try our best to be professional and help of the Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Please accept our sincere apologies short inconveniences occur before, during, or after the event. I wish you a productive conference with exciting and inspiring discussion and knowledge exchange, so that together we can anticipate a future of groundbreaking environmental studies, legal and political ecology, discourse for humanity and our environment. May be good as all to make this event successful. Thank you very much. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for the Dean of Faculty of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, and all distinguished participants, it is an honor for us to invite the Director General of Environmental and Forestry Law Enforcement, Dr. Rasio Ridosani, SSE, MCom, MPM, to give his keynote speaker. But before that, let us explain you briefly about Dr. Rasio Ridosani.
Before holding the position of Director General of Environmental and Forestry Law Enforcement, Mr. Sani had been the head of Bureau of Planning and Partnership, also had been the deputy of Waste, Toxic and Hazardous Material Management. And just before he became the General Director, he was the Secretary General of the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Mr. Sani got his bachelor degree in Universitas Indonesia, majoring chemistry, his master degree in University of Sydney, Australia, and University of Potsdam, Germany, then his doctor degree in Universitas Indonesia. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Rasio Ridosani, SSE, MCom, MPM.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think this is a good opportunity to me to having. Wait a minute. Sebentar. Sorry, they have a problem with the sound. Is this okay? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
clear.
Hear you
Clearly.
Sebentar. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, Honorable Dean Faculty of Law, University of Negeri Semarang, Dr. Rudiah, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and all the speakers. I think this is a good opportunity to me to having this occasion. But before I present before I deliver my speech, I would like to say that good morning, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to convey sincere thanks and also apology from Professor Dr. Siti Nurbaya because she cannot attend this very important conference And then he assigned me to represent her in this conference. This conference for us is very important because we can discuss and share our experience and expectations regarding to law enforcement in environmental matters. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, speakers, please allow me to share some my presentation through the screen. Thank you. I hope you can see this is my PowerPoint presentation in the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can see
Okay.
clearly.
Thank you. Now, since I'm in this keynote speech, I would like to sharing with you about how can we moving forward in promoting environmental restorative justice. I mean, this is very interesting topic to be discussed. And then this topic actually happens in many fora when we want to moving in better way regarding to conducting law enforcement. My presentation actually divided into 4 parts. This is first, I would like to introduce about Indonesian situation regarding to environmental protections and management, and then why environmental law enforcement does matters. This is, I think, this is very important because this conference related to the law enforcement, and then how can we initiate and bring restorative justice into law enforcement in order to enhance effectiveness of environmental law enforcement. And then the last part of my presentation will be in the conclusion. As we aware that Indonesia is mega diverse country, we have a unique environment and climate. This is not many countries in the world have this kind of opportunity, has this kind of gift from the God actually. And then as you know that Indonesia has one of the largest forest area in the world. It accounted more than 1,029 million hectares. We also home for rich biodiversity, either terrestrial species and marine species. In addition to the mega diversity, the largest tropical forest in the world, Indonesia also having unique environment and climates. Comparing to other countries, because I've seen that there is a professor from Hungary, and then our climate is relatively mild. We only have 2 seasons. We only have dry season and rainy season. I mean, this is unique. And all of these resources, it is our comparative advantage. We have a rich natural resources, unique environment and climate. This our comparative advantage. In addition to that also, as I mentioned to you, Indonesian natural resources also very important, not only for Indonesian people, but also for the people of the world. Our forests, our mangrove, and many other ecosystems, it is global climate regulators. In addition to global climate regulators, as you know that Indonesia and all the world now facing what we call is climate change. Since Indonesia has one of the largest tropical forests and also the largest mangrove, as well also we have the very big area of the ocean, our position is very important as a global climate regulators. In addition for that, Indonesia also have home for thousands and thousands species that very important for bioprocessing, food security, as well also source of for medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned to you, since we have abundance and rich natural resources, unique environment, and climate, Indonesian has a strong commitment in protecting our environment. To ensure that good and healthy environment and natural resource is the greatest benefit to all the people and sustainable development, Indonesian, in our constitution, put this strong commitment. How can we deliver and to ensure that each person in Indonesia to enjoy good and healthy environment? It is reflected in Article 28, letter H. In addition to that also, Indonesian constitution states that the land and the waters are, as well as the natural risks, therefore are able to control by the state to be exploited the greatest benefit for the people. Our commitment also to protect environments and manage it sustainable way is also reflected in our constitution in Article 34, verse 4, in Article 33, verse 4. The organization of national economy shall be based on economic democracy that uphold the principle of efficiency along with the fairness, sustainability, and environmental sound. Based on this one, we can see that how strong Indonesian commitment to protect our environment and natural resources, because we have a green constitution. This is our capital in managing our environmental in sustainable ways. However, we are now facing an intense challenge regarding to environmental crime threat. As I mentioned that we now facing environmental pollution, environmental land degradation, illegal logging, forest and land fire, encroachment of forest area, either for illegal plantation or illegal mining, wildlife crime, and transboundary pollution. This is our environmental challenge that we have faced day by day. And then this environmental challenge we have to, if we cannot handle this environmental challenge, that it create a serious impact. It create ecological disaster, they have also social conflict and public health problem, as well as that financial loss. In this situation, if we cannot handle this problem, it all will ruin our comparative advantage. As mentioned that before, Indonesia is rich of natural resources, unique environment and climate as our comparative advantage. And then, as you mentioned that, what kind of characteristic environmental crime as so far? Environmental crime, it is organized crime. In many cases, it is organized and transnational crime, involve many parties and group of the people. Environmental crime is by nature itself, this is also transboundary and involve cross-border actors. In addition for that also, as mentioned to you, that characteristic of environmental crime, it is organized because it involves many actors, sometimes also involved, this is backed up by apparatus, state apparatus, and environmental crime also create economic or financial loss, and it is a serious crime because it impacts and interlinked with other crime. As for your information, that when you know that when you see environmental crime, this is not solely environmental crime. There's many other crime related to environmental crime, such as corruption, bribery, also taxation, illicit trading, as well also many illegal mining sometime, and many other type of crime, money laundering. Based on its characteristic and an impact, we classified environmental crime as extraordinary crime. Extraordinary because it has a serious impact to ecological disaster, social conflict, public health problem, and state financial losses, but also environmental crime. It is organized, transboundary, and interrelated crime. To tackle such extraordinary crime, there is a badly needed of right policy, instrument, and approach. In order to effective law enforcement in environmental crime, we have to conduct it in innovative ways, including to funding right instruments. In this presentation, actually, in this keynote speech, I will write some issue. How can we move environmental law enforcement forward to environmental law enforcement based on restorative justice? Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers and audience, you can see that how the impact of environmental crime, this is transboundary. Yeah. A couple months ago, we tackled transboundary movement of hazardous waste, and then this already punished by court, this transboundary hazardous waste from Singapore to Indonesia. This captain Singapore owned vessel jail in Batam over toxic waste. This captain, it is a sentence for 7 years. And also in addition to that transboundary, in many cases, environmental crime also interrelated crime. This is not only environmental crime, but mostly also sometimes related to the money laundering and corruption. Because economic crime, it is economic crime. The motive of environmental crime rely on the financial gain or financial benefit. Based on research conducted by many other researchers, yes, environmental crime estimated to be among most profitable proceeding-generating crime in the world, generating around more than 110 to 281 billion environmental crime gain every year. Since it involves so many profit from environmental crime, we have to tackle this crime is very serious one. We cannot handle it with the conventional way. Environmental crime also create environment and state losses. In many cases, we have conducted. We can find that, for example, from forest fire, state get huge loss from this environmental crime for forest fire because there is environmental degradation, and also states should be spent a lot of expense to stop of the forest fire. Based on these characteristics, transboundary, interrelated crime, it's shown that environmental crime is really extraordinary crime. Distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, why environmental law enforcement does matters? Because environmental law enforcement, can stop manipulation and can restore the loss from the environmental crime. As we know that, as mentioned before, that Indonesia have strong commitment on protecting and managing of our environment. It's followed up by many laws pertaining to environmental protection and law enforcement. At least there is 8 law under Ministry of Environment Authority that dealing with environmental protection and law enforcement. First of all, law conservation, law on forestry, law on waste management, law on environmental protection and management, law on prevention and eradication of forest destruction, soil and water conservation, prevention and eradication of money laundering, and law of job creation. This law providing mixed policy instrument and approach to protect the environment. For example, if you read and see about the law in environmental protection and management, they provide us with mixed policy instrument from preventive effort through implementing of environmental strategic analysis, environmental assessment, preemptive effort, and then prompt preventive effort is through environmental license or permit, environmental audit, and environmental compliance inspection, and also providing instrument repressive control through effective law enforcement by imposing administrative sanction, civil lawsuit, and criminal law enforcement. Law enforcement also very important. As you know that, based on current law, for example, most of our law giving authority to the government to conduct law enforcement. For example, if you examine carefully, based on law, if you examine carefully, law number 32 concerning environmental protection and management, there are 54 articles out of total 120 articles, or 45%, it is relating to law enforcement. In addition for that, we also have special law that dealing with law enforcement. That is in area of forestry sector. It is law number 18, 2013, concerning prevention and eradication of forest destruction, with almost all other articles containing prohibition and criminal provision that dealing with law enforcement. Environmental forestry, environmental crime, including forestry crime also, is categorized as predicate crime in law number 8 of 210 concerning prevention and eradication of crime money laundering. If you can see that this is how important this is law enforcement in protecting our environment. Law enforcement is matters because also it is environmental crime is serious, it's organized crime, and in many cases, public expecting that law enforcement is a frontliner in protecting the environment and forestry. In fact, that law enforcement is the last resort, because public think that if every problem on environment arise from the weak of the law enforcement. In fact, as I mentioned that before, there's so many other instruments like either preemptive instruments or preventive instruments like license, EIA, and many other instruments. Law enforcement also matter for restoring state reputation. Without law enforcement, it will ruin state reputation if there is a pollution or environmental crime. Ladies and gentlemen, this is law enforcement matters because Ministry of Environment in 2015 established specialist unit for law enforcement with what we call is Director General for Law Enforcement, or Director General Gakum. It is the only ministry has a specialist unit in dealing with the law enforcement on environmental crime. This is very important, this approach actually. Having the specialist unit or institution, it can focus on reduce of conflict of interest, because this unit is specialist, and enhance compliance rate and improve the governance. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very serious in taking law enforcement. There is so many law enforcement action has been conducted by the ministry through Operation Security Restoration, Operation Security Restoration, Compliance Inspection and Administrative Sanction, out-of-court settlement, civil lawsuit, and criminal law enforcement. There is more than 1,800 operations we have been conducted to ensure that environment and forests are secure from perpetrators or offenders. And also we have conducted intensive compliance inspection and giving the sanctions. This is more than 1,500 sanctions we have been given we have issued to the corporation who not comply with our regulation. And also we have conducted intensive civil lawsuit. We always bring, we bring more than 31 civil lawsuit And then we also conducted out-of-court settlement. There is a 224 agreements on out-of-court settlement through ADR. And then, based on our experience, we have won historical civil lawsuit in this country with a value of EDR 20 trillion rupiah, or equal to 1,500 billion US dollars. In addition to having operation of security restoration, conducting compliance inspection and sanction, conducting civil lawsuit, and also out-of-court settlement, we also conducted criminal law enforcement. It is more than 1,200 cases we send we bring to the prosecutors for the trial, and we facilitate more than 250 cases to the other investigator or prosecutor. This is our seriousness in conducting law enforcement. And then, how can we move in order to increase the effectiveness of law enforcement that we have conducted before? First of all, I'll mention to you, now we have a discussion on how can we promote restorative justice concept in environmental law enforcement. Indonesia, restorative justice concept has been implemented. Yeah? As we know that there is this MOU among head of Supreme Court, Minister of Law and Human Rights, General Attorney, and the head of National Police about implementation of restorative justice. In which restorative justice is defined as settlement of minor crime by investigator at the investigation stage, yeah, or judge from the beginning of the trial by involving perpetrator, victim, families of perpetrators, or victim and related community leader to jointly a fair solution and enhancing recovery of original state. So in this case, that this is clear that restorative justice and how can we restore the damage or the harm of the crime. In other crime, this already clear definition of restorative justice as stated in this MOU, and is follow up in investigation level, prosecution level, and court level by establishing of regulation from the police, regulation from the prosecutor office, and regulation from DG General Court, from the Supreme Court. However, in the environmental law enforcement, we haven't clear yet what definition of restorative justice, but we work on this. I think this conference is a very good event when we can get suggestion, advice, and about how can we move into restorative justice and environmental crime. Why do we need environmental restorative justice approach? First of all, as I mean, current environmental law enforcement practice is punishment-oriented offenders and ignoring the need, restoring damage and loss of the victim. That most practical we have conducted so far, because most of our criminal law enforcement focus on how can we punish the offenders in terms of sentence and the fine. In fact, that an offender must directly accountable to the victim. They have harm and they have responsible to restore material losses of the victim. I mean, the arguments, this consideration, why do we need moving to the environmental restorative justice? There's so many discussion actually academically about environmental restorative justice concept. For example, Porskit mentioned that environmental justice concept might apply in the context of environmental harm. It creates opportunity to better repair and correct harmful practice and prevent future environmental damage. And also, environmental restorative justice means finding a way, restoring biodiversity, ecosystem health, access to safety place that have been damaged, and restoring it. I mean, this kind of concept we want to bring into environmental law enforcement. And we can, as we see that environmental justice is a medium or opportunity to integrate instrument of environmental law in restoring damage of losses and losses of the victim. We try to utilizing all the instruments that under our authority, including administrative sanction, compensation, and criminal law, in order to fostering or implementing restorative justice. And we do hope that also restorative justice approach can enhance implementation of the principle of the law. This is expediency or benefit, justice, and legal certainty. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned to you that why we do need restorative justice, because we want to increase the effectiveness of law enforcement and to meet the objective of law enforcement, including to restoring the loss of the victim. In environmental law enforcement or environmental crime, there are three victims actually. First, an environment itself. We have to represent environment. The second, the community. And the third is the state. And how can we implement the restorative justice? Yeah. To compensate the victim and punish the beneficiary, restorative justice must go beyond criminal law enforcement, because criminal law enforcement is not enough. In order to speed up restoring, in restoring of the laws. Environmental justice can be applied by using various enforcement instruments. First of all, the staging is we can implement element of restorative justice. For example, we start to apply the fine, alternative fine, through giving alternative sanction. Or we can also using alternative dispute resolution, and we can move into conducting the law enforcement in money laundering enforcement. Ministry of Environment Civil Investigator has power in investigate money laundering crime based on constitutional court decision. In addition to that, also, we can implement multi-door. The staging is we conducting first through each element of restorative justice, having fine, and also our cost settlement, dealing with the compensation and environmental restoration. And also we can implement employing additional sentence in criminal law enforcement, because in environmental law, there is an article mentioned that additional sentence might be imposed on business entity in the form such as apprehend the profit derived from the crime and conduct the repairing of the damage caused by the crime. It is the way we can do or implement restorative justice. And another approach, it is we conducted by implementing integrated multi-instrument restorative justice. This is not conducted separately, but we do it together. We can impose affirmative fine, and also we can conduct it through civil lawsuit and also through criminal law enforcement, including dealing with money laundering, investigation, and asset recovery, as well as also multi-door approach in criminal law enforcement. Multi-door approach, it is very innovative way actually to increase deterrent effects of the offenders. while we can investigate based on several law, Ministry of Environment is our investigators that have conducted in several cases on multi-door approach. We investigate on environmental law and also in forestry law. Now we have intensive discussion with other ministry or authority to having joint investigation in conducting multi-door approach, including we have discussed with an investigator from Ministry of Mineral Resources, Ministry of Fishery and Marine, and also Ministry of Special Planning. Yeah, we have discussed with this all ministry, including with the police and also prosecutor or general attorney, how can we implement multi-door approach? Ladies and gentlemen, restorative justice, it is very important to increase effectiveness of law enforcement, including through first loss recovery and restoration of the victims. And also, law enforcement should be against the main actor or beneficiaries. In many cases, law enforcement only focus on the field actors. In fact, that the actor who get more benefit from the crime, it is the main actors. And also, environmental restorative justice can provide legal certainty because it will conduct in restorative justice, yeah, in restorative and fair way by the application of normative fine. Ladies and gentlemen, before I finish the presentation, I would like to highlight some important issue in my conclusion. First, there is an urgent need enhancing effectiveness of environmental law enforcement through implementation of restorative justice. Environmental restorative justice is meant to restore environment and ecosystem that have been damaged, as well also to restore state and community laws. In essence, restorative justice against environmental and property damage, the challenge is how law enforcement demand recovery, how law enforcement demand recovery for environment, society, and the state. It's not enough just imprison people with implement the instrument of law, civil and criminal law. It means that, as mentioned to you, the essence of restorative justice against environmental law, against environmental damage, it is we not only giving a punishment to the perpetrator, but we asking them to restore the damage, the damage for the environment, society, and the state, not a demand, the damage. And then we can implement it through multiple instruments of law enforcement. It is administrative, civil law, and criminal law. And then there's many ways to do it, as I mentioned before that, using ultimum remedium, providing, employing additional sentence, and enforcing money laundering, investigation, and asset recovery. And finally, thank you very much. I do hope that my speech can give you some understanding or information about what is current practice on environmental law enforcement, especially in our initiative on promoting environmental law enforcement in restorative justice. Thank you very much. I do hope that I was asking for apology if there is something wrong in my presentation, slip of tongue, or maybe not give you clear information. Thank you very much. Nggak bisa, Mbak? Go ahead. Nggak bisa ya?
Masih di mute channel Eva Unes. We can hear you, we cannot hear you.
Sound of the voice is clear now?
Okay. Can you hear us now? Wow, thank you.
Thank you so
Sorry
much.
for the technical problems.
Once again, we would like to say thank you very much for Dr. Rasio Ridosani for your enlightening presentation. Thank you again. Thank you so very much. And now this is the time we are waiting for. We are going to have our speaker session, and we have our moderator here, Miss Irawati, PhD. But before that, we will introduce her briefly.
Mrs. Irawati PhD started her teaching career at the Universitas Negeri Jakarta in mid-2004, and starting in February 2021 till now, she teaches at the Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang. She took her undergraduate degree at the Faculty of Law, Gajah Mada University, and she completed her master's degree in law at the University of Indonesia, and also she took her PhD degree in University of Canberra. Without further ado, please welcome Ms. Irawati PhD. The time is yours.
Thank you, Imam and Intan. I hope my voice is clear. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamualaikum. May God bless us all.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much for joining our annual academic event this morning. Thank you, Dr. Rasio Ridosani. From your explanation, I think in my understanding that Indonesia has been tried to accommodate the change of issues in environmental problems in our legal system. Thank you so much, Dr. Rasio Ridosani. So the honorable invited guests, invited speakers, Associate Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan from University Technology Mara, Malaysia, Professor Chaya Birchwatch, Associate Professor from OP Jindal Global University, India, Associate Professor Ildiko Barta, PhD from University of Debrecen, Hungary, and Associate Professor Dr. Ali Mashar Mursid, SHMH from Universitas Negeri Semarang, Indonesia. All participants and audiences, Dr. Rodiah SPD SHMSI, our beloved Dean and Vice Deans, and other leaders of the Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang, all academics, staff, and students from master's and bachelor degrees of the Faculty of Law Universitas Negeri Semarang. My name is Irawati. It is an honor for me to be appointed as the moderator for this important and enlightenment session. We would be having 4 prominent experts in legal fields from 4 different countries. On this 5th event of ICILS, the focus is on what has been believed as one of the biggest problems for all creatures globally. That is about environment. With the advancement and the dynamic of humankind, the issues in environment are more complex and have significant differences with what happened a decade ago even. Thus, gladly we will listen to the invited speakers, their perspectives on the issues related to environment. Before I continue, please allow me to greet all the invited speakers. From Malaysia, we have Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan. Hello, Professor. Hi. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam, Dr. Irawati. Thank you so much for inviting me. Such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for your availability, Professor.
Pleasure.
Yeah. And then we have Professor Chaya Birchwatch from India. Hello, Professor. Are you here? Hi.
Hello. Hi, Ira.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good also. Thank you. So what time in India at the moment?
It is 8:30 in the morning right now.
Oh, okay. I can see from the light from your ventilation. It's a good light in this morning. Okay, thank you, Professor.
Thank you.
And then we have the Associate Professor Ildiko Barta. Hi, Professor. Professor Ildiko.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, clearly, Professor. How are you?
Fine, really fine, thank you.
Nice. Thank you for joining for our today's event, Professor. And then we also have Dr. Ali Masyar. Hi, Assalamualaikum, Pak Dr. Ali. How are you? Oh, it's still mute, Pak Ali.
I'm sorry, Assalamualaikum. Thank you. I'm fine, Ms. Ira.
Okay, nice to hear that, Pak Ali. Thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will have around 20 to 30 minutes to listen to each speaker's enlightenment. And I believe that you have many questions since the theme is close and relevant to our even daily lives matters. Please hold your questions until all the speakers talk. When the time has come, please raise your hand, and you could also write your question on the chat box. Please kindly be noted that the chat box will be open when the 4th speaker delivering his speech. So from the first one, we have Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan. Please allow me to read her curriculum vitae just briefly. So, Associate Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan, she has been teaching in University Technology Malaysia. Her qualifications are she got PhD Law, and then Master of Comparative Law and Legum Bachelor, if I'm not mistaken. LLB is Legum Bachelor. Yeah, okay. It's with honors. Wow. And then her areas of interest, among other, cyber law, law of contracts, technology and law, artificial intelligence and law. And then she got many awards. Here, I just read some of them. In 2020, she got the Anugerah Penerbitan from Majelis Raikan Kegemilangan Fakulti Undang-Undang. And then in the same year, actually, she got 2 other awards. But here, I only will read one more. There is Anugerah Gerah Pendidikan, Geran Penyelidikan. Apology. From Majelis Raikan Kegemilangan Fakulti Undang-Undang. And she also has numerous works. Among others are liability framework for cognitive computing in healthcare standing at the crossroad. And then the legal implications of a sale of property by the Malaysian developers under the private lease scheme into mines. So the Professor Dr. Hartini Saripan, without further ado, the screen is yours, Professor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Irawati. Thank you for your kind invitation. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good morning. It's 11 o'clock here in Malaysia, and I believe it's about 10 o'clock in Jakarta. There, yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And I would like to congratulate Dr. Radia, the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang, and all colleagues from Fakultas Hukum, Universitas Negeri Semarang, for the success of organizing the 5th International Conference on Indonesian Legal Studies 2022. It's not easy to organize the conference, but you have actually come this far, and this is actually your 5th series. That is an amazing achievement. So congratulations to Ibu Radia as well as the Faculty of Law, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Thank you for a very enlightening presentation from our keynote speaker just now, Dr. Rasio. And I would also like to greet all my fellow speakers. So nice to meet all of you from different countries. Students, postgraduates, as well as undergraduates, lecturers, ladies and gentlemen. And I noticed that we have closely 230 participants in this conference. So that is also an achievement to the organizer. So congratulations, Fakultas Hukum, Universitas Negeri Semarang. Allow me to share my slides, and I think my colleague will help me. Nuruz, are you here?
Yes, Dean, but I am not given the access to share my screen. Can I have the permission?
Dr. Irawati, can you give the permission to share slides to Nuruz? The name is Nuruz Sakinatu.
Of course.
The technical team can help?
Yeah, I believe that the access has opened.
Not yet, Doctor.
Oh, not yet.
Oh, already. Thank you.
All right. Oh, already. All right.
So while waiting for Nuruz to share my slides, I have chosen a very specific topic today that is on climate change. And I combine this topic actually with my area of interest, that is technology law. And I am currently doing a number of research involving emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence. In fact, Nuruz here is doing a PhD on artificial intelligence. So we were very excited when we conducted this research, combining this application of artificial intelligence in the domain of environment, particularly in combating climate change. So hence the topic today is artificial intelligence gambit in combating climate change. Is it a friend or foe? Yeah, that's the reason why initially we wanted to put a chicken and egg, but we thought that, you know, friend or foe is better reflecting the issues that we will later see when it comes to the application or adoption of AI as a tool in combating the issue of climate change. So this is actually part of our faculty. So I would also, I'm the dean of the faculty, so I would also like to take this opportunity to invite our friends from Indonesia to pay a visit to the Faculty of Law, University Technology Mara. Right, next, Nuruz. Ladies and gentlemen, when we talk about climate change, no doubt that this is a global issue. And I think long ago, we always mentioned that climate change is a future problem. But I think it is no longer a future problem. It is the problem that all of us are very focused. I think governments around the world are looking into this. Malaysia last year have consistently put the agenda of climate change or issues on climate change, green technology, greenhouse initiative in our 12th Malaysian plan. And why I say consistently, because we have actually started way before that, even it was included in our 10th and 11th Malaysian plan. So to say that this is a future problem, I think is no longer correct, because we have actually seen and witnessed how this change have actually portrayed or reflected a very much widespread effects on the environment. So we are talking about, for example, glaciers and ice sheets are shrinking, river and lake ice is breaking up earlier than it should be, plants and animal geographical ranges are shifting. So these are just some of the effects. There are actually more. In fact, the scientists had long predicted the results from global climate change. And now whatever predictions have become a reality. So we are in the context of Malaysia, and I believe in many parts of the world, we are actually talking about sea ice loss, accelerated sea level rise, and we are also talking about the increase of the rainfall. And of course, this is also quite important. We are talking about a very intense heat waves. So droughts, for example, extreme rainfall are happening faster and faster. And in fact, according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, modern humans have never before seen the observed changes in our global climate. So some of these changes, this is very dangerous. I think most of these changes are irreversible. We can't, we can't easily repair that. And these are irreversible over the next hundreds or thousands of years. And I think another thing that we should also focus on this issue is that it is not just impact us from the environmental perspective, but more importantly from economy, political, and social impact. So that's why I think taken as a whole, the range of the evidence indicates that net damage costs of climate change are likely to be significant and rising over time. Next. So in the context of Malaysia, what I am sharing with you more to the Malaysian landscape, which I think some of the issues are similar to even to Indonesia. So we are talking about some effects of climate change. And one of the effects are rain and floods. In fact, lately in 2022, the Ministry of Environment and Water had actually highlighted that the average annual rainfall in Malaysia is expected to rise from 14% to 25%. So the intensity of tropical storms in Southeast Asia is projected to increase due to climate change. And we are also talking about deforestation. In fact, I think last year, there was another a very good development when we talk about environment litigation. It is not directly on climate change litigation, but it was regarding deforestation. And this case was actually Taman Rimba Kiara. It was the Court of Appeal case decided last year, where the courts have actually unanimously decided and halted that the proposed development that would cause irreversible destruction to the ecosystem and the biodiversity of the flora and fauna of Taman Rimba Kiara as null and void. So this is actually a very good progress. It is quite difficult to see this kind of development in Malaysia. So what happened last year was actually a very promising development, legal development, particularly when we talk about environment litigation or climate change litigation. So deforestation is one of the effects of climate change. And we are also talking about coastal areas where the sea level is projected to continue rising to about 0.73 meter by the end of the 21st century. And this is very, very alarming because if we see historically sea level rise over the period of 1993 to 2015 at around 3.3 mm per year east of Malaysia and around 5.0 mm per year west of Malaysia. So to have the projection of the rise, which was again highlighted by the Ministry of Environment and Water, was very, very alarming. Next. We are also talking about food production. So climate change influences food production directly and indirectly with its effect on crop growth processes. So we are talking about how droughts and floods have actually reduced or could actually reduce yields by up to 60% according to the statistics. And one of the direct effects include the alteration to carbon dioxide availability. And we are also talking about indirect effects, including impacts on water availability, soil organic matter and erosion, changes in pest and disease profiles. Suddenly we witness new disease profile, COVID is no longer new. We have new things, after this, and it's very, very worrying. New invasive species and decline in areas due to submergence of coastal areas. So I think we are also very worried when we talk about the submergence of coastal areas, and Malaysia is of no exception. And I think another effect is urban heat. Not just, this can actually cause our life. It can actually cause fatal. There is a relationship between heat stress and labor productivity, household consumption patterns, and living standards. So often we hear people fall sick because of the heat, and this is also another effect that all of us should actually give our focus and our concentration in addressing it. And we are talking about how urban heat island in which dark surfaces, residential and industrial sources of heat, and an absence of vegetation and air pollution can actually increase temperature higher and higher compared to rural surroundings. And I think so many areas have been developed, particularly rural areas, especially, in the context of Malaysia. And Malaysian government, I think, is very serious in controlling development. And later we will see some of the policies have actually been reviewed and amended, and a new law would be passed, and this is one of the commitments shown by the Malaysian government. Next. So having said that climate change is not a joke, lately, or I think, a couple of years ago, we've started to hear how emerging technology, specifically artificial intelligence, could actually play their role in combating climate change. So this AI is used as a tool, and it is uniquely positioned to help manage these complex issues. So we are actually speaking about how AI can strengthen climate predictions and enable smarter decision-making for decarbonizing industries, for example, from building to transport, and work out how to allocate renewable energy. And this climate prediction, I think, is very, very important. In fact, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change uses a prediction model to forecast climate patterns. And this means that AI predicts more accurately than the other technology, a more traditional technology. And because of that, it makes better climate prediction decision. It could actually predict weather patterns and extreme weather events because it takes into account real world data and factors which are otherwise very difficult to collect, such as atmospheric, oceanic dynamics and chemistry, and many more. In 2020, December 2020, Malaysia once again was hit by a very, very bad flood. In fact, UITM is actually in Shah Alam. And I think I've been living in Shah Alam for the past 20 years and never experienced any flooding. But in December 2020, most of Selangor areas, KL areas, the areas that never flooded before, were hit by this catastrophe. And currently, Malaysian government is looking very seriously how artificial intelligence can actually be leveraged to make climate predictions. And we actually learn from the 2020 lesson. And if we have this more accurate climate prediction, we can strategize our mechanisms and way to address this way beforehand. So we are actually speaking about the importance of climate prediction that can be offered by artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can also be used to reduce the amount of carbon emissions through smart energy usage, and can make the use of renewable energy a matter of a future household's daily life. So artificial intelligence aim to incorporate renewable energy into entire grids, by which entire cities will be powered. So this would eventually reduce the need for fossil fuels. It's just that later we will see what is the impact of artificial intelligence that really make artificial intelligence as a foe to a certain extent, what are things that need to be cautioned when we talk about the application of this sophisticated technology. Next. In Malaysia, I would only give you two examples of the application of artificial intelligence to combat climate change. One is sensor flow and another one is Be Bright. Sensor flow is actually a tool or the tool to drive the establishment of green hotels, which definitely has a huge impact on combating climate change. So this is the smart IoT solution for hotel room environment management. And it already arrived in Malaysia, this technology. And what it does, it monitors, analyzes, and automates hotel room environments to optimize energy efficiency so as to reduce operational costs. So it empowers more hotels to improve their energy efficiency and sustainability. And eventually, we witness this as as the alignment with the Malaysia's sustainability reform agenda, as Malaysia is emphasizing on green growth and sustainable development. So this is a smart green solution offered by Sensor Flow, which leads to the establishment of more green hotels in Malaysia. So I think, this is what the tourism industry is also looking at, how this technology would actually support an interconnected network of devices to monitor hotel rooms environment in real time, including temperature, humidity, occupancy status, and energy consumption. So the artificial intelligence software automatically increases the room temperature, or it could actually switch off the air conditioner to save energy. So the data collected is also easily accessible to hoteliers on web-based analytics dashboard, which would allow the remote control and management of our room. So this is how Sensor Flow, as one of the AI or technology software, AI software is used in order to improve the energy efficiency and sustainability at hotels. Another example of AI applications is Be Bright. And Be Bright just came to Malaysia, and this is actually one of the technology to advance energy efficiency using artificial intelligence. So energy efficiency is at the core of economic and environmental issues faced by companies and organizations. So taking control of energy strategy means developing competitiveness in a sustainable moment. So to address these energy issues, Be Bright provides supports with an original approach based on artificial intelligence. So what happened is that this technology will provide an optimization or optimizing the energy performance of modern development in the heart of Kuala Lumpur. And we are talking about office towers, residential towers, large retail mall and hotels. And Be Bright will be installing its AI-based software to deliver, again, automated and predictive control service to the chiller plants at the 5-story shopping mall and 2 of the office towers. So this is also another applications of AI where the service would contribute to lowering the carbon footprint of the building and also advance energy or efficiency in Malaysia. Next, Nuruz. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the title said friend or foe. We have actually seen the friendly part of AI. So what is the bad part of the AI? You know, why these to a certain extent have actually become a challenge for some of the jurisdictions, and also a huge debate for environmentalists when they talk about the application of the super sophisticated technology. Now, the first impact is environmental impact. Yeah, environmental impact. Artificial intelligence, definitely, no doubt, it can actually help us fight climate change, but it also comes at a cost to the planet. So we have actually seen studies that artificial intelligence that use what we call machine learning requires a large amount of data and energy, and that is used, and these amount of data and energy needs to be processed and stored, and it requires some super computing types used to process and to store this. And this is where the bad part comes in, where the storage and particularly the processing of this data to train algorithms, that is to provide the recipes, computers to make calculation for prediction in data centers or in the cloud across different centers with rows of machines doing computation, consume energy. So these would actually in turn would release a very huge energy, and some of these things use as much energy as, according to some scholars, that the usage of these, the use of energy in these data centers can actually is equivalent to the energy of a small city. So although AI actually has been around for about half a century, I think the question of environmental impact and other ethical issues is only arising recently, because the technique developed over decades can now be used in combination with an explosion in data and strong computational power. So we have to start thinking about doing AI in a more environmentally friendly way, because a study actually indicate that the great potential of AI to minimize consumption and make grid-related efficiency optimized would consume too much electricity and energy and power. So this would, again, like a chicken and egg situation, we use artificial intelligence to settle or to address climate change. And in turn, the usage of artificial intelligence itself has an implication on the environment. So more recent discussions have started to discuss how we can minimize the environmental impact of artificial intelligence, particularly when they are used to combat or to address the issue of climate change. Next is data privacy. So this is another, excuse me, Dr. Irawati, until what time I have? How long?
Thank you so much.
How long do I have?
Hi, Professor. Yeah, actually, about 5 minutes more. Okay, thank you.
So another one, I will go very, very quickly. Another issue or another impact or adverse effect of artificial intelligence is data privacy issues. These happen basically when what we call this artificial intelligence tool linked largely to a data-hungry form of the technology. And this is what machine learning is all about. And they actually make predictions and decisions, and they would actually collect data that would raise concerns about creeping public surveillance, intentional misuse, privacy, transparency, as well as data bias. So AI opens up some new possibilities for understanding the vast array of data obtained from many components of climate and utility, but it also leads to concerns about the private information that can be gleaned about individuals through their behavioral patterns, with fear of accidental or malicious surveillance, targeted home invasions, profiling, behavior tracking, or identity theft. So let me just go to the next slide. Okay, next one. Now, this is some of the Malaysian initiative to address climate change in Malaysia. As I mentioned before, this agenda has been included in the 12th Malaysian plan, also in the earlier Malaysian plans. And recently, the government have agreed to review the national policy on climate change, which was established in, which was introduced in 2009. So fast forward, now they are reviewing the policy in order to incorporate more issues, more current issues, and we hope that the adoption of emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence with some address in this policy. And we are also talking about the establishment of the Act. And according to the government, it is ready to be tabled in 2024. So this is again a specific act concerning climate change. And of course, we are talking about the domestic emissions trading scheme by the Ministry of Environment and Water in order to control emission, carbon emission, where certain charge would be, or ceiling or cap would be put, and they would be charged according to the formula. And we are also speaking about how our central bank in Malaysia play their role in providing a sustainable and climate resilient financial system initiative. And also the Ministry of Education, when we talk about digitalization of education in producing talents with relevant skill sets. Now, one of the problems in Malaysia is that we don't have enough talents to handle the sophisticated technology. We are talking about AI, we are talking about green technology. So the Ministry of Education, particularly through some of the efforts like TVETs, have started this agenda in order to nurture young talents with relevant or the right skill sets in handling the technology. So the way forward, lastly, the way forward, I think, would AI be the best solution? I think for now, this is the best solution. It's just that we have to be cautious of the adverse effect of AI, particularly on the environment and on the issue of privacy. But if you refer to literature and some studies that have been conducted, these impacts have to a certain extent be addressed in order to minimize such risks. And would AI replace the jobs of environmental lawyers and policymakers? Now, this is where we have to strike a balance between the role of AI in combating climate change and the role of human or the role of litigators or policymakers, as it is also acknowledged that due to some adverse effect of AI, we can actually submit that to replace totally is impossible. Okay, the time's up. I think, lastly, it requires multi-pronged effort to combat climate change and concerted efforts from multi-players and stakeholders. I think I will stop here. I would love to have more discussions, and perhaps we can actually have question and answer after this. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for a little bit, dragging of time, Dr. Irawati. And I think, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. You're on time. In my understanding that your speech is actually like us about the using of AI instead of as a foe, but as a friend to overcome the climate change or environmental problems in Malaysia. So thank you so much, Professor. So ladies and gentlemen, we move to our second speaker now. Our second invited speaker was graduated from one of the best law school in environmental law in the US, probably even in the world. Hello, Professor Chaya Birchwatch. Yeah. Hi. So I reckon that your work mostly cover environmental issues. So before the screen is yours, please allow me to read your short curriculum vitae. So Associate Professor Chaya Birchwatch is from OP Jindal Global University. She is a professor in this university and also actually a United Nations trained international lawyer. She got her degrees from Chaudhary Charan Singh University and University of Vermont. And then these are her selected of various awards. She received the United Nations Fellowship in 2017. And then she has the opportunity to attend the regional course in international law, Asia Pacific. And then the local pathways fellowship by United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network for her work in environmental education and youth empowerment in 2018. And she also received Best Research Paper Award from institutions like the Law Commission of India for her research in environmental and international law. And her selected works are the title Blue Carbons as a Voluntary Pledge for India under the Paris Agreement and Disaster-Induced Internal Displacement in India, Denial, Protection, and Policy. And her areas of interest are environmental law, of course, information laws, international development, and international dispute settlement mechanism. So Professor Chaya Birchwatch, without further ado, the screen is yours, please.
Thank you so much, Iravati. I hope my voice is audible to everyone.
Yes. Your voice.
All right, I'm going to share my screen now.
Yep, I believe it's already appeared, Professor.
All right, great, thank you. The topic that I have chosen today is climate change and human mobility. And before beginning with this topic, I really want to thank Faculty of Law, University Negeri, Indonesia. And I also want to thank ECHO for inviting me for this conference. It has been an absolute honor to be presenting before all of you and more than 200 number of audience that is present to attend the conference today. Also, thank you so much, fellow colleagues, for attending this conference. I'll now begin with my presentation. So the topic that I'm presenting today is climate change and human mobility. We all are, and Professor Hartani made us aware about the impacts of climate change and the general impacts of climate change. And I believe you're all aware that climate change, sea level rise, and extreme weather events are becoming a phenomenon of the century that we are living in. And we are likely to experience extreme heat waves in sea level rise as we move forward in this century. And one of the impacts of climate change, sea level rise, and extreme weather events is migration of people, meaning people end up moving from one place to another due to these extreme weather events and sea level rise. And in this context, I'm presenting what is the correlation between climate change and human mobility or climate change and human migration, and what are the policies that can be developed or that can be created by the governments, especially in India and Indonesia, because we are at the center of experiencing human migration because of climate change and sea level rise. And therefore, what policies can in fact help us protect people in this anthropocentric policy-making world. And on the screen, there's a picture that shows that there are a variety of disasters that are happening, a variety of events that are happening in our world today. These variety of events include slow onset, slow and sudden onset, sudden medium onset, and sudden onset disasters. What this means is that these are categories of various disasters. If I'm saying sudden onset disaster, I'm saying an extreme weather event like a typhoon or an earthquake, which appears suddenly and creates sudden impacts on people and the area around. When I'm saying slow onset disaster, I mean disasters that are appearing slowly on the surface. The example of a slow onset disaster would be sea level rise, which means that the sea level is happening. Sea level is a disaster, but the disaster is appearing on the surface or in the lives of a variety of people over the course of time. So these are slow onset disasters. Now, people who are going to be affected by slow onset disasters, meaning by disasters like sea level rise, are going to be impacted for a longer term. It also means that they are going to be forced to move out of their houses permanently. This implies that they are going to be relocating permanently because of the sea level rise. On the other hand, if I'm talking about a sudden onset disaster, like a typhoon or an earthquake, it implies that the migration because of an earthquake or a typhoon is only going to bring a temporary migration. This implies that people who are affected by earthquake or typhoons will be displaced or will be forced to migrate out of their homes for a small time period, and then they can be brought back to their areas of habitual residence. Now, these are two categories of situations of people who will be or will not be forced to migrate permanently or temporary. Now, this is a number, this is a report that was developed by the World Bank that is there on the screen. And it shows that South Asia and East Asia are most impacted or are likely to have most number of internal climate migrants or people who are going to be migrated because of climate change or extreme weather events or disasters in general. Now, India is also at the center of migration because of climate change and sea level rise, because the countries that surround India are, or the neighbors that surround India are largely countries that are coastal countries or countries that are island countries. And because of sea level rise and coastal erosion, it is at the center of receiving more cross-border migrants or migrants who are going to be migrating from their country of origin to India over the course of time, because sea level is rising as we talk about it right now. Now, this is a more focused data statistics of how India is affected, or the region in general is affected because of climate change. And in the picture, if you see, Indonesia is also at the hotspot of migration that is arising due to climate change, natural disasters, natural hazards, and other disasters. So, and the likelihood of people migrating within the country and people migrating from the country affected by the disaster to another country is very high. India is also experiencing floods right now, and I believe Indonesia has also experienced some floods because of the El Nino phenomenon or the phenomenon that creates monsoon in India. So this is one particular event that India and Indonesia both are impacted in the same way. Now, speaking about the technicalities of the term itself, which is human mobility simply does not mean movement of people. Human mobility is a broader term, and it includes forcible movement, which is displacement. It also includes voluntary movement, which is migration. And it also includes things like, or concepts like relocation, resettlement, immigration, emigration, refugees, cross-border displacement, internal displacement. Now, these are a lot of technical terms. I'm not sure if I will be able to address the meaning of all of these terms in the presentation, but I will try my best. Now, beginning with the idea of voluntary or enforceable displacement, the idea is to understand that migration or movement of people is because of two factors. First factor is in the control of the human beings, and the second factor is something that human beings cannot control while they are on the move or while they are moving. Now, the factors that are in control of humans can include a variety of things. For example, when people choose to travel from one country to another, when people choose to immigrate, they are deciding on factors that are in their control. When people choose to move for education from one place to another, those are the factors that they are in control of. They can choose and decide which place to move for education, which university to take, so on and so forth. And therefore, these factors which are in control of humans cause what is known as voluntary migration and not forced migration. The second category of factors are factors that are not in control of people. This means that factors like earthquake, or factors like fire in the house, factors like a violent conflict are not in control of human beings. And therefore, due to all of these factors, people do not migrate, but they are forced to leave their homes or habitual areas of residences. And this kind of migration is known as forced migration or displacement. Now, currently, in the context of climate change, the forced migration is happening both internally, meaning within a country, and cross borders, meaning from one country to another. In India as well, we are experiencing a lot of internal displacement due to disasters, where people are forced to leave their homes due to floods, due to typhoons, etc. But then we are also experiencing people who are coming from countries like Bangladesh, which is affected by floods, climate change, and sea level rise. So this is a continuous phenomenon today. Now, within this context of migration, when people are on the move, there is a category of people who are most vulnerable, meaning if they are on the move, these are the category of people who are going to be most impacted because they are on the move. Now, these category of people include women, children, elderlies, disabled, and people from small island nations. Now, this is a picture which exemplifies sinking islands. And if you can see in the picture, there's an island, the Lohachara Island from India. It started submerging in the early 1980s in India, and people were relocated from Lohachara Islands to other places in India. And today, after almost 30 years, we see on the satellite image that is there that Lohachara Island is completely submerged under the sea level rise that is happening. And currently, a lot of people who were relocated from Lohachara Island to another island, that another island is also submerging and sinking. And therefore, these people who were relocated are facing a continuous challenge of living in the menace of sea level rise. Now, these are a variety of policies that the Indian government has launched and is working on. However, protecting people who are migrating or who are forced to migrate due to climate change and sea level rise needs a lot of work to be done within the context of India. And this means that there needs to be very strong policies that the Indian government needs to bring up and needs to implement. Now, if you're talking about protection of people who are migrating in the context of climate change, like I said, there are two categories of people. The first category is people who are migrating from one country to another. Now, for the protection of these people, we may look at international law. And one of the international law that we can look at is the 1951 Refugee Convention that governs movement of people who are forced to migrate from one country to another. However, the challenge with the 1951 Refugee Convention is that it does not cover environmental issues and climate change issues as one of the criteria for movement. Now, if you can read on the screen, the text in the green are the criteria or are the triggers that are covered by the 1951 Refugee Convention. It means that if people are fleeing due to reasons of persecution arising out of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or membership in a particular context, then they will be protected under the 1951 Convention. And then it also means that they will be recognized as refugees. This implies that if a person is migrating from one country to another because of climate change or sea level rise, the person will not be regarded technically under the 1951 Convention as a refugee. This also implies that if you're talking about climate refugees today, under 1951 Convention and generally under international law, climate refugee does not exist. Just excuse me for a minute. All right, so I was saying under international law and generally under the 1951 Convention, the term climate refugee does not exist. This means that if we're saying that there is an issue of climate refugees, international law does not recognize the term climate refugees just generally. So this implies that the law of 1951 Refugee Convention does not protect people who are climate change.
Professor.
Yes.
You have still 5 more minutes.
I will summarize this.
So sorry.
Ravati, no worries. All right. So there was one case, the cross-border displaced persons case, that was raised before the Human Rights Committee. And I will just summarize this in one go. So Toshiyota, he approached the Human Rights Committee in 2019, and he approached the committee and said, I want to be recognized as a climate refugee. Has he been recognized as climate refugee? He would have been the first person. Now he was from Kiribati, and his wife and 3 children applied to be recognized as climate refugees, but the committee did not accept his plea. And he said, right now, there is no enough evidence to recognize you and your family as climate refugees. So his claim did not succeed. But the Human Rights Committee also said that this particular case can open a lot of pathways for people to be recognized as climate refugees in future. And therefore, we are likely to see more claims or more legal cases in a similar context. Now, apart from this, we also have the internally displaced persons due to climate change. And there are these 3 countries, including the Indonesian policy on relocation. We have Fiji, Vanuatu, and Indonesia who are focusing on relocation and who are focusing on policies that can allow protection of people in the context of sea level rise. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Professor Chaya Birchwatch. Thank you, Professor, for sharing your valuable knowledge. It's even not a question and answer yet, but that there is one question empty that we will go to the speaker's talk. All right, thank you. So we will go to our third speakers for today. Professor Ildiko Barta. Hi, Professor. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please allow me to read your brief curriculum vitae first. So, Associate Professor Ildiko Barta has been teaching at the University of Debrecen, Hungary. She is the alumni of University of Miskolc for PhD in law, obtained in 2010. Her selected works The title, among others, are Higher Education in the European Union, Member State Regulation and Integration Obligations, and then European Union Compatible State Measures and Member States' Interests in Public Services, Lessons from the Case of Hungary. And the other one, Public Service Exceptions in Trade Agreements of the European Union, in European Union Resources and Member States' Public Finances. And her areas of interest, among others, are in legal and constitutional foundations, institutional issues of European Union external relations, and relations between policy actors. So Professor Ildiko Barta, without further ado, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, Professor, clearly.
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for organizing this wonderful conference and the opportunity to be here. As you can see from my CV, my main research field and education field is the European Union institutions, internal market, public services, and so on. And it also underlined my approach to the topic of the current conference. Please let me share my screen. And I also try to move my slides. Can you see my slides moving?
Move, Professor?
Yes, yes.
No, it hasn't moved yet.
Can you see? Yes, they move. Okay. So the title of my presentation is Smart Cities and Sustainable Local Public Transport, an ecological governance from European perspective. As my co-speakers, yes?
Your slide hasn't moved.
So that doesn't move.
Yeah, it hasn't moved. It doesn't move. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Now, okay.
Yes.
Now it is better. Okay. So. First of all, I would like to mention, as my co-speakers already confirmed, that the ecological challenges, both in Europe and other parts of the world, are common and are intertwined. Despite the fact that these are common challenges, there are many diversities and particularities in the way as they emerge across the globe. And we can identify many core problems of these ecological challenges, but one of these is the environmental impact of urban living. And this is the issue that I would like to focus during my presentation. First of all, you can see some statistical data about the impact of urbanization. As you can see, the urbanization share of the world is growing constantly because while in the 1915 there was only 30% of population living in cities or settlements, now it is around 50%, and it is still growing. and expected to be almost 60% by 2050. I can also show you an urbanization statistic by regions. You can see that Europe, which will be also focused in my presentation, has a quite large percentage. This percentage express that this is the percentage of the population in Europe who live in settlements and cities, and it is expected to grow to more than 80% by 2050, despite the fact that the annual urban population growth rate is not too large. These statistics also indicate that it is important to discuss about the climate impact of urbanization. Why the cities are selected for that topic? Because of the fact that they occupy only 2 or 3% of the planet's landmass, but they consume over 65% of the world's energy and account for more than 70% of the global coal dioxide emission. This statistic also shows that cities are key player in the global fight against climate change. And this is what I want to discuss today, that what is the role of the European Union in promoting this fight. You can see that the main sources of greenhouse gas emission in the European cities are the buildings, the energy consumption of buildings, then transport of goods and persons, and the production and consumption of goods and services. The transport of goods and persons is highlighted here in that slide. The reason for this is that I also would like to talk about the public transportation, local public transportation, and the efforts of the European Union to improve the climate neutrality of this. This number, 35%, justifies why it is important to talk about local public transportation. Here you can see a small map about the urban policy of the European Union. It is important to highlight, first of all, that urban policy officially not exists in the European Union. It is not of itself an EU-level responsibility, policy chapter in the EU funding treaties, but urban policy targets are closely integrated in a large scale of particular European Union policy fields. And in that map, you can see these particular European Union policy fields. I don't want to talk about all of these. I just would like to highlight 3 of these. Environmental policy is very important because the fight against climate change, which is, we can say, the main objective of EU environmental policy, is closely integrated in the EU urban policy targets. And it is also expressed in the promotion of smart city programs that I also would like to address today. EU transport policy is also very important. I would mention both dimensions of this importance. Of EU transport policy is the transport policy, transport as a public service. So it is also important part of the EU transport policy targets to support the use of urban public transportation and public transportation in general, because public transportation is more environmental friendly than the usage of cars and other vehicles. And thirdly, I would like to mention the EU competition and state aid policy, which is about the question of how the market principle of the European Union can be incorporated in the organization of transport policy. This policy field is very much about the question whether the state or public authorities must intervene in the organization of transport policy, or whether companies and market actors can be effectively involved in the organization of transport policy. And I also would like to show you the main instruments of the EU urban policy. These instruments are also adapted of the above mentioned EU policies, to which the urban policy targets are integrated. And these instruments in a nutshell are as follows. There are legislative and regulatory instruments like provisions regarding the management of urban wastewater, management of environmental noise, and so on. So these are legally binding regulation that European cities must implement in their urban planning strategy, organization of public services in the city. But I would say that the next instruments like strategies and action plans have much more weight in terms of the European Union's contribution to fight against climate change at urban level. So that means that strategies, formulation of priorities of climate change are formulated at the EU level, and the action plans are also formulated at the EU level, but they need to be implemented at the level of national governance, regional governance, and local governance, and which is closely connected to the strategies and action plans is the next category, the incentive-based instruments, including financial support, because these are the instruments which closely connected to these strategies and action plans makes the European Union's contribution effective. Because a large amount of monies at the EU level can be granted to support the fight against climate change at the level of the European Union. The information and community-based instruments often prove to be useful instruments to support the climate change targets of the European urban policy. We can see, and it is also clear from the above mentioned instruments, that the European Union is rather operates in the urban policy as an actor who shapes the framework of urban policy and provides incentive for climate-friendly urban policy. But I would say that the main actors are those who implement and coordinate the urban policy at the local level, like local governments or public authorities at all governments level, but connecting to the urban policy making, civil associations, citizens, companies, and business association. So I would say that the frameworks and incentives given at the level of the European Union are very good and promising, but the core is the success of the implementation of these targets. Now I would like to move to more concrete examples. First, I would like to mention the issue of climate smart cities. As I already mentioned, the climate change targets are strongly integrated in the EU urban policy. So here you can see on the right side of the slide these main targets of the EU climate and environmental policy regarding the reduction of greenhouse gas emission as a long-term strategy by 2030 and 2050. These policy these targets are also integrated in in the EU urban policies, and as you can see, these policies, these targets are also in line with the climate change target formulated in an international instrument, the Paris Agreement, which means that these are not only the targets of the European Union, but also international wide targets. And this is also important to highlight that these climate smart cities or climate smart cities are not unique creatures only belonging to the European Union, but climate smart city plans or targets are also formulated in other countries, in other regions. For example, as far as I know, Indonesia also have a climate smart city plan by the end of 2045. So that's why it can be an interesting example. The concept of climate smart cities can be very briefly defined as cities where innovative tools and smart solutions are applied as a result of effective local governance of different actors like citizens, businesses, public authorities,
Professor,
and are, yes?
Excuse me, yeah, you still have 5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, thank you very much. I would like to mention the financial incentive, which is provided by the Horizon Europe program. The essence of this program is to support and promote 100 European cities in their systemic transformation towards climate neutrality by 2030, and to make these cities into experimentation hubs in order to help other remaining climate cities to be climate neutral by 2050. Here you can see a map of these cities. As you can see, a total of 360 million euro as a direct EU fund is disbursed among the selected city by 2033. And you can see here that all the EU member states' capital is involved here. And also there are 12 more so-called associated non-member countries who are participated in that program. In the remaining time, I would like to highlight the open questions and challenges which can be raised when studying this climate smart city program. We can see that there is a large diversity in the 20 selected cities in climate awareness and climate neutrality preparedness. So you can see very good examples, European cities who already formulated climate neutral action plan and already prepared, at least partly successfully, the part of this plan, like Copenhagen, which has an action plan to be carbon neutral by 2025, and highly advanced in terms of technology and urban planning, and also is able to attract world-leading companies to invest in smart city project. This palm-shaped urban plan is one of the innovation that I don't want to discuss now in details, but it is the essence of this, that the urban transportation is organized in the outer edge of the palm, and in the area between the fingers are green area located. Helsinki is also a very good example for a well-organized, with a well-organized public transport system and very smart mobility service solutions. And Lyon is also an interesting city due to its artistic heritage, promoting art and culture and on public transport means. like you can see here, a tram which is dressed in street art piece. It is also a good tool of promoting usage of local public transport means which are more environmental friendly. However, I can also mention for that diversity as the Budapest, where the public transport organization also works quite well, but we can see a sad phenomenon that that political considerations and its financial consequences may undermine the operation of the local public transport system. You can see here that there is a tension between the central government and the local government because of the governing parties, governing party of the central level, of course, and the opposite party as governing at the local levels, and these have very sad consequences on the regulation of local governance finance. Because not only Budapest, but other cities are governed by the opposite party. And it has also consequences in the central government funding. And you can see that the operation budget deficit of the local public transport transport operator is growing currently. And I also wanted to share some doubts about the relationship between the impact of current crisis and climate neutrality targets. In lack of time, I only would like to highlight the essence of these crises. The COVID-19 pandemic recovery measures and instruments of fight against climate change are often associated in European cities, and recovery strategies try to adopt more environmentally friendly solutions. But we can also see tension in it because public transport means would be an environmental friendly solution. However, the urban public transport is the mode of urban transport that suffered the greatest negative impact compared to other transport modes. So this is a tension, reason for tension, why it is implement successfully COVID-19 recovery plans, which are also environmental friendly. Other phenomenon which closely impact the success of European cities to be smart, climate smart cities, is the current energy crisis that emerges as a consequence of the Russian-Ukraine war. Because the increase of energy prices has a negative impact on local public transport on a long term. Of course, there is also an attempt to
My apologies.
Yes, okay.
Professor, is it possible?
Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So to my conclusion, the European Union is committed to adopt measures and incentives to support fight against climate change at the urban level. But as you have seen, the success very depends on those local actors who implement these measures. The successful fight against climate change is largely influenced by the negative impacts of current crisis, like the COVID-19 and the Russian-Ukraine war, which these two crises make tensions between the reality and between the ambitious aim of being climate neutral cities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Berta Ildiko, for sharing your valuable knowledge from the EU sides. I apologize for the time arrangement since we have received some questions. So I have to move to our last but not least speaker today, Dr. Ali Masyar Musid, SHMH. He is an associate professor and actually our Vice Dean of Faculty of Law for General and Financial Matters, Universitas Negeri Semarang. He is an alumni of Gajah Mada University for his doctorate degree. And then he got his master and bachelor degrees from Diponegoro University, Semarang. And these are his selected works, criticize the use of analogy prohibition in criminal law, the invisible big waves, from how Indonesia combat with radicalism and terrorism in global perspective, position of the victim in criminal acts, illegal logging, and then these two are in bahasa Indonesia, menghilirkan ilmu hukum pidana berketuhanan, and memangkas penularan teror. His areas of interest are, among others, terrorism and the law, and penal law. Sir, Professor Dr. Ali Masyar Musid. Hello, sir. Yeah, the time is yours, sir. Hello, Pak Ali. Still mute? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Hello, yeah.
Halo, Ira. Assalamualaikum.
Pak Ali. Waalaikumsalam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okay, can you help me to share my video, Ms. Ira? Because
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay.
Okay. It's in processing to give you access.
My internet is unstable.
Sir, please be noted that your time is 20 minutes, sir, because we have others, some question already pops up in chat room. Okay, so yeah. Is the access already appeared, sir?
As about protection of criminal law on the environment in Indonesia. At this moment, I will present in Bahasa, so my PowerPoint in English version. Okay, let's go. The environment is an element that cannot be separated from human life. Saya kira kita sama-sama mafhum bahwa lingkungan merupakan unsur penting yang tidak bisa dipisahkan dari kehidupan. Meskipun kita juga sama-sama tahu bahwa unsur utama yang dibutuhkan oleh manusia ini semakin hari juga ada permasalahan-permasalahan secara hukum. Starting from the 18th and 19th centuries, effort to protect the environment by the world community have started from the sectoral, individual, and sporadic. Perkembangan waktu awal-awal terbentuknya lingkungan atau kesadaran hukum lingkungan mula-mula berjalan secara sektoral, kemudian individual dan sporadik. Kira-kira baru abad 20 blueprint atas perlindungan lingkungan hidup baru mulai digagas oleh negara-negara di dunia. Baik negara maju maupun negara berkembang sama-sama sebenarnya adalah mengeksploitasi sumber daya alam dan lingkungan mereka tanpa mempedulikan kelestarian lingkungan. Jadi inilah yang menjadi dasar dari rusaknya lingkungan hidup. Namun demikian, there is difference between developed and developing countries in exploitation, and the environment lies in the motivation for exploitation. Kalau umumnya negara-negara maju mengeksplorasi alam sumber daya lingkungannya itu karena kebutuhan atau karena untuk konsumsi. Sedangkan bagi negara-negara berkembang, umumnya adalah eksplorasi ini adalah to be sold, to pay debts. Jadi mereka itu karena untuk membayar hutang-hutang yang barangkali dalam rangka untuk pembangunan. Mari kita lanjutkan. Bahwa masyarakat internasional sejak 1902, there is protection of birds that are useful for agriculture and the main basis of community life. Jadi tahun 1902 ini sudah mulai ada perlindungan terhadap burung, di mana burung itu yang berguna bagi pertanian. Nah, kemudian 1933 mulai ada the London Convention relative to the preservation of fauna and flora in their natural state. Mulailah kesadaran bahwa perlu pelestarian fauna dan flora dan fauna di alam bebas mereka atau habitat asli mereka. Konvensi ini memang masih skupnya adalah di wilayah Afrika, tetapi ini menjadi dasar utama untuk flora dan fauna ke depan. Lalu dilanjut pada tahun 1954 tercetuslah the London Convention for the Preservation of the Pollution of the Sea by Oil. Jadi ini juga sudah mulai bahwa perlindungan pelestarian laut dari polusi. Nah, baru kemudian tahun 1972, saya kira ini sudah sangat familiar bahwa ada the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment. Disinilah kemudian kita ketahui ada deklarasi Stockholm atau Stockholm Declaration. Mari kita bahas. Stockholm Declaration believe the first, man is both creature and molder of his environment, which give him physical sustenance and afford him the opportunity for intellectual, moral, social, and spiritual growth. Diakui bahwa manusia dalam satu sisi dia adalah merupakan makhluk, tetapi di sisi lain dia juga merupakan kreator dari alam lingkungan itu. Karena sama-sama disadari bahwa alam lingkungan itu juga memberi rezeki dan memberi kemampuan fisik, beri kesempatan untuk pertumbuhan intelektual, moral, sosial, bahkan pertumbuhan rohani. Di sisi lain bahwa setiap manusia has a fundamental right to a healthy and proper environment for life. Setiap manusia itu memiliki hak fundamental atas lingkungan yang sehat. Oleh karena itu, maka setiap manusia memiliki tanggung jawab untuk melindungi lingkungan demi generasi kini dan yang akan datang. Sama-sama kita tahu bahwa sejarah mencatat the Stockholm Declaration didn't go well. Jadi tidak berlaku efektif. Oleh karena itu, maka United Nations eventually formed the World Commission on Environment and Development. Akhirnya kemudian PBB menggagas sebuah komisi, the World Commission on Environment and Development. Melalui komisi inilah the spirit of protecting the future of the environment and even the future with humanity or our future common begin to be rekindled. Jadi kita mulai sadar bahwa lingkungan ini merupakan untuk kemanfaatan kita bersama di masa depan. Komisi ini menyadari bahwa pembangunan dan lingkungan hidup itu saling menafikan. Jadi antara pembangunan dan pelestarian lingkungan hidup di satu sisi, kalau boleh dikatakan, saling mengancam. Jika kita memprioritaskan pembangunan, maka lingkungan hidup disetujui atau tidak, diakui atau tidak, juga akan menjadi tercederai. Sebaliknya, jika kita mengutamakan pelestarian lingkungan, maka pembangunan pun juga akan mandek. Oleh karena itu, kemudian akhirnya lewat komisi itu lahirlah Rio de Janeiro Declaration. Itu United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. Ini juga menjadi sangat fenomenal yang kita sebut dengan Rio de Janeiro Deklarasi Rio de Janeiro, Brasil. Ini merupakan satu monumen dalam kesadaran umat manusia dalam melakukan pelestarian terhadap lingkungan. Disinilah mulai diketahui atau mulai diperkenalkan bahwa of sustainable development. Jadi mulai disinilah mulai dikenalkan ada sustainable development, pembangunan berkelanjutan. Dari sinilah kemudian kita sama-sama tahu bahwa di setiap negara, hampir seluruh negara, kemudian membuat sebuah terobosan-terobosan hukum agar bisa melestarikan dan melindungi lingkungan hidup di masing-masing negara. Kita lihat bagaimana perlindungan lingkungan hidup di Indonesia kalau dilihat dari perspektif hukum pidana. In Indonesia, there are two regimes in environmental protection in criminal law. Jadi ada dua rezim dalam upaya negara dalam melindungi lingkungan hidup. The first we call pra-regime, and the second pasca regime. Jadi ada dua rezim, yang pertama adalah pra-regime dan pasca regime. Kita sama-sama tahu bahwa rezim ini tuh dibatasi atau didemarkasi adalah dengan lahirnya Undang-Undang Nomor 4 tahun 82. Undang-undang ini merupakan undang-undang yang luar biasa bagi Indonesia dalam rangka melindungi lingkungan hidup. This law becomes the parent or umbrella act in other laws that regulate the environment. Jadi inilah merupakan satu terobosan ya sebagai satu payung hukum bahwa disitulah Indonesia mulai memperhatikan lingkungan hidup. Kalau dilihat dari sisi undang-undang yang pra-regime, kita lihat bahwa sejak Hindia Belanda pun there are many ordonansi dan banyak ordonansi yang di situ boleh dikatakan juga membahas tentang atau melindungi tentang lingkungan hidup. Such as Naturnormenten Ordonansi tahun 1916, Ridden Reglement 1925, Hinder Ordonansi 1926, Monumenten Ordonansi 31, Zas Ordonansi, Ordonansi Perburuan tahun 1931 juga. Di situ juga ada perlindungan binatang-binatang liar, Dieren Beschermings Ordonansi. Bahkan kalau setelah itu juga lahir banyak peraturan perundang-undangan. Kita tahu ada undang-undang UUPA, undang-undang pokok agraria, undang-undang tentang hygiene untuk usaha-usaha bagi umum, dan seterusnya, dan seterusnya. Hingga akhirnya kemudian lahirlah Undang-Undang Nomor 4 tahun 1982. Disinilah menjadi monumen penting bagi bangsa Indonesia dalam memayungi, dalam memproteksi lingkungan hidup in criminal law. Baik, setelah itu kita sama-sama tahu bahwa selama ini lebih banyak peraturan-peraturan yang melindungi lingkungan hidup secara perspektif hukum pidana ini lebih banyak dilakukan dengan skema administratif criminal law. Jadi administratif criminal law itu adalah hukum pidana, hukum administratif, tetapi yang memanggil sanksi pidana. Jadi secara secara induk begitu. Sebenarnya dia itu hukum administrasi, tetapi memanggil pidana sebagai sanksi. Namun demikian, as a part of criminal law, administrative criminal law seharusnya juga mematuhi dan wajib mematuhi ketentuan-ketentuan yang ada pada hukum pidana atau induk hukum pidana. Baik, ladies and gentlemen, saya kira bahwa undang-undang hukum pidana yang ada di Indonesia, saya langsung masuk. Kalau tadi adalah hukum pidana administratif, administratif penal law, sekarang kita pidana ya, yaitu yang pertama adalah sengaja dan yang kedua adalah lalai. Nah, jika itu ada yang di pasal 346 tadi adalah soal kesengajaan, sedangkan yang 347 ini adalah kelalaian. Kalau orang lalai mengakibatkan rusaknya pencemaran lingkungan, maka dia dikenakan pidana maksimal 2 tahun. Nah, berikutnya pun sama. Ketika kelalaian itu akhirnya menyebabkan kerugian yang lebih serius, sakit atau luka yang serius, atau penyakit yang serius, maka menjadi 4 tahun. Dan apabila meninggal orang yang terkena, maka menjadi 5 tahun. Bapak Ibu Saudara sekalian, tidak hanya itu sebenarnya, tidak hanya di pasal 346 dan 347. Jadi ada banyak pasal-pasal yang juga masih dipertahankan. Kalau di pasal-pasal yang di Penal Code KUHP, ada banyak pasal-pasal yang misalnya terkait dengan ledakan, membuat banjir, membakar, api, dan sebagainya, atau menjual barang busuk. Itu juga masih ada di dalam draft of penal code kita. Bahkan kita juga ada, ya, jadi ada bab tersendiri, yaitu bab 8, which regulated crime that endanger public security. Jadi yang mengatur tentang tindak pidana yang membahayakan keamanan umum bagi orang, kesehatan, barang maupun lingkungan hidup. Jadi di sini sudah ada langsung bab khusus yang meregulasi terhadap pelanggaran-pelanggaran lingkungan hidup. Akhir saya kira kita masuk kepada konklusi. Konklusi kita yaitu bahwa kita sama-sama tahu bahwa lingkungan hidup itu merupakan bagian yang tidak terpisahkan dalam kehidupan itu sendiri. Jadi kita sama-sama kerusakan sebenarnya itu adalah pelanggaran terhadap HAM. Jadi menikmati lingkungan hidup yang sehat adalah sebuah hak asasi manusia. Oleh karena itu, maka pelanggarannya juga jelas merupakan suatu pelanggaran hukum. Nah, saudara sekalian, namun sayangnya, jadi meskipun ini sudah diatur di dalam Penal Code maupun in the draft of Penal Code, dua aturan utama ini yang patut kita sampaikan di sini adalah dua-duanya itu masih lebih ke arah rumusan yang material. Jadi hukum atau sanksinya adalah atau perumusannya adalah hukum pidana material. Jadi dia material ya, perumusan atau tindak pidana material. Maaf, tindak pidana material. Jadi tindak pidana material itu artinya adalah dia melakukan suatu tindak pidana. Kalau tidak ada akibat, maka belum dikualifikasi sebagai tindak pidana. Jadi harus ada akibat. Berbeda dengan tindak pidana formil. Kalau tindak pidana formil lebih ke arah perbuatan. Jadi perbuatannya itu apa? Langsung bisa dipidana. Saya kira itu. Terima kasih. Thanks to all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Professor Dr. Ali, for sharing your valuable knowledge. So now we will, as all the speakers has delivered their speech, so it's time for Q&A session. Professor Hartini Saripan, Professor Chaya Birchwatch, Professor Hildiko Barta, and Professor Dr. Ali Masyar. So we have received some questions here. I hope that you don't mind because the time is already quite tight, that I read all the questions and then probably you can prepare and then you can answer the questions with whoever is already ready. So the first one is the question comes from, excuse me for a moment, from Iqbal. So his question is for Dr. Chaya, Dr. Barta, and Dr. Hartini. Based on United Nations Environmental Program, there is necessary to do a green economy development as a part of Sustainable Development Goals. So the question is, what kind of specific mechanism or strategy that in your country does to fulfill green economy development during post-pandemic COVID? So it's after probably 2020. And then we have also, hello, Dr. Laksanto Utomo and Dr. Lenny. Thank you for your question. Their question goes to Miss Chaya Birchwatch. How is India going to program the Indian government? The Indian governments for climate change with a high population in India? Actually, I think it's relevant also for Indonesia because Indonesia also has a high number of population. And then we have also from Dr. Dewi. Hi, Dr. Dewi. Her question goes for Dr. Barta Ildiko. When the people of the European Union are facing an energy crisis, how the European Union is dealing with the current energy crisis? So she wants to know what's the strategy from the European Union, or for Hungary, for a particular doctor. And then we also have question from Christopher. Yeah, good morning. Thank you for your question. He also would like to ask to Dr. Ildiko Barta, vehicle electrification is a trend these days. How is the European Union governing this trend? Yes. In your opinion, Doctor, how effective is the electrification of vehicles and public transportation in developing countries that is actually still use non-renewable resources like coal in preventing global warming? And other question is actually goes to our keynote speaker. I would ask him to whether he would answer the question directly, and I will come back again. Hello, Dr. Rasio Ridosani. Hi, sir.
Hi.
Yeah,
What is my question?
Yeah.
I should answer.
Ibu Shizuka would like to ask question to you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, is it possible that you will answer the question after all the speaker answers the aforementioned questions? Jadi,
yes.
Bapak mungkin
I should answer it right now, or I should wait after other speaker respond to all the question, Mbak.
How about after the speakers, other speakers respond, sir?
Yes, it's okay. Actually, I already write it in the chatting room. I already answered directly to the Ibu Shizuka.
Thank you so much, sir, for your kindness. Thank you. So I will invite Dr. Hartini Saripan. Would you like to give your response to Iqbal?
Thank you so much, Dr. Irawati. I think the question was, what is the initiative of the government in supporting supporting what? SDG.
Green economy, yes.
Yes, and green economy, right? Okay. Now, this is the part where I think during my presentation, I have to briefly discuss due to time. But what I wanted to actually share with you just now during my presentation is the initiative of the government and other agencies. That's why in my last slides, I said it requires a multi-pronged effort and concerted effort from multi-players and multi-stakeholders. And one of the players that is very important to support the establishment of green economy is our central bank. And I have also shared with you very briefly just now the initiative taken of the central bank to preserve monetary and financial stability and in order to make our economy more sustainable and climate resilient. And there are basically several or various activities by the central bank. For example, the establishment of the Joint Committee of Climate Change. And this is actually the coordination of an effort between the Bank Negara Malaysia, Security Commissions, Bursa Malaysia, and we have 21 industry players together in the committee to come up with the strategies to build climate resilience within the industry. So the effort has actually been championed by the Central Bank Negara itself. So that is one. Another initiative that is, I think, just recently announced by the government via the Ministry of Environment and Water is the domestic emissions trading scheme by the Ministry of Environment and Water and the establishment of the carbon market policy framework, which I think both initiatives have a huge impact on the growth of economy, to channeling our economy towards the establishment of a green economy. So I'm sure some of you have heard the emission trading. So this domestic emission trading scheme is to be implemented by the ministry in collaboration with the Finance Ministry and Bursa Malaysia. And the idea of developing this emission trading scheme is to prepare actors in the economy for the implementation of carbon control mechanisms through international trade. So I think, a domestic emissions trading scheme is a system where they would set emission caps for greenhouse gases emitted by primary emission sources to ensure emission reduction. So it works on a principle of cap and trading, where the government would impose a limit or a cap on total emissions in one or more sectors of the economy. So all these are some of the initiatives, but of course, these initiatives are post-pandemic, especially when we talk about domestic emission trading scheme, as well as the establishment of the carbon market policy framework. But there are actually other initiatives which would in turn have an impact on the growth of economy. And I think the backbone of these initiatives started from the Malaysian plan, particularly the 10th and 11th, and currently the 12th Malaysian plan. So I think I would stop here to give way to my fellow speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So we will listen to the second response from Professor Chaya Birchwatch. Professor, you have 2 questions.
Yes, thank you, Iravati. I will begin with first question that was asked by Iqbal as to what the Indian government is doing to balance economic development and infrastructural development. I would begin with saying that the Indian judiciary has had a very big role to play in balancing development and economic development with environmental protection. So for the first time in India, the idea of sustainable development was introduced by Indian judiciary. And they said, while we need industries to have economic development, we also need to protect the environment. So the first step was taken by Indian judiciary through laws and by holding the corporations and the government accountable for environmental violations. Currently, the government is assisting those affected by disasters and those affected by environmental changes through cash transfers and compensation. So that is another element of economics that is added through the Indian policies. And the third way that the Indian government is trying to fund and support people economically who are affected by environmental challenges is through funding or support from international organizations, donors, etc. So international organizations like the World Bank or other country supports or grants sometimes is helping the Indian government to allow economic development while not causing any environmental damages in India. So that is my response to the first question. In relation to the second question about what the Indian government will do in order to protect people, keeping in mind the high rising population. I would say that this is a very big concern in India, the rising population and their protection. And therefore, the focus of the government is, first of all, to protect people who are at the front line of getting affected by disasters. So, say, for example, people who are actually living on sinking islands are the first priority of the government. This allows the government to not focus on the 1.3 billion people that we have, but only on the select groups of people, and then focus the resources on protecting them first. Similarly, people who are affected by sudden onset disasters like typhoons or floods, a lot of resources are dedicated in order to protect them because they are at the front line of experiencing disasters in the moment. While the other people who are not in that zone of disasters can be left behind for the moment because they're not getting affected by the immediate crisis at hand. So this is what the government is practicing right now, and we'll see how it goes over the course of time. Thank you so much for your questions.
Chaya Birchwatch, for your response to the questions. Next, we have 3 questions for Dr. Barta Ildiko. Professor Dr. Barta Ildiko. Hello, Doctor. Hello, Professor.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for the very insightful question. First of all, there is a question regarding the European Union's, how the European Union's Union is facing the energy crisis, and how the EU is dealing with the energy crisis. What is the strategy? So it is an interesting and complex issue. We can say that even before the crisis, the energy crisis, the European Union also had strategy as the part of its climate neutral strategy to support by all available means the renewable energy. So there were regulations at the level, binding regulations at the European Union to promote, which aim to promote the usage of renewable energy. And there are, I would say that there are 2 main sources, financial sources of funding renewable energy sources that the European Union can directly or indirectly manage. On the one hand, there are direct EU funds, similar to the smart city funds that I mentioned in the presentation. So there are direct funds to promote research, for example, and new energy saving solutions using renewable energy. And there are also, this is also the, as regards this was the direct contribution of the European Union. And as regards the rather indirect contribution is that the so-called state aid, direct financial supports from the member states to certain sectors or companies are, as a main rule, prohibited in the European Union, but there can make exemptions from that, and working out energy saving and energy saving constructions, solutions, and research and other solutions which promote the usage of renewable energy. These are such reasons that can justify making exemptions from the EU strict state aid prohibition rules. So there can be these renewable energies and energy saving solutions can serve as a good reasons for not to apply strict state aid prohibition. This of course, the current energy crisis also contribute to extend the scope of such direct and indirect funding measures. So, for example, as a direct EU fund, there exists a so-called EU Energy Crisis Fund, which which aims to implement solutions for finding renewable for replacing the traditional energy sources with renewable energy. And it is also important to mention here that more or less these are the main sources, and there are no strict EU energy crisis strategy so far. So, and this is the reason why the European Commission, one of the leading European institutions, is the subject of very strong criticism that it didn't work out stricter energy strategy so far. And regarding the other question, the vehicle electrification, it is also, I would say, that the part of the climate strategy of the European Union to reduce as far as possible the emissions from cars. And there are also funding programs, funding incentives in order to reach this ambitious aim. And here it is also true that I mentioned before that national state aid measures that try to promote such initiatives, these are very often exempted from the very strict state aid prohibition rules. And which is a very new result, European Parliament resolution, which formulated the European Parliament's commitment to determine at the EU level that not to produce after 2035 those cars which do not use renewable energy. But it is only a Parliament resolution, and the Parliament resolution is not a binding document. So it is a very good and welcome initiative, but still not a binding EU level regulation. But on the other hand, there are also binding regulations at the EU level, safety regulations for using electric vehicles. For example, as we know, electric vehicles are so sometimes it is a problem that in the traffic, you cannot hear the noise of electric vehicle. So there are, for example, regulations at the EU level which try to regulate this issue as safety problem related to electric vehicles. And as far as I know about the developing countries situation, there are also initiatives to introduce electrification of vehicles, but because as the question also stated, because of the lack of enough renewable resources, many of these are rather initiatives and not completely implemented plan. Thank you very much. As far as I know, I had these two questions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Professor, for your response. Actually, we have another question comes from Ibu Rizka. Hi, Ibu Rizka. She raises her hand for about 10 minutes probably. Ibu Rizka, please, would you like to raise your question by yourself, please? The screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Rizka Al-Kadri. Hello, everyone. I have a question. I'm trying to be quick to deliver my question. So I have a few questions to all speakers. First, I have a question for Dr. Hartini Saripan. So I'm interested with the theme on your research, which is relation between AI and environment. I remember watching a short video about social media companies in United States, how powerful they are in building a very small city to become much more developed. But it follows with several impacts like waste and global warming. So I'm just curious, how do you respond to this issue? Are they truly a threat to the environment? And then how would be bright a technology that you mentioned before manage their waste? And then Prof. Chaya Birchwatch, my question.
Sorry, Dr. Rizka, your line was breaking just now. I can't hear the question. Can you quickly repeat it? Sorry.
Okay. All right. So my question for you, I remember watching a short video about social media companies in United States, how powerful they are in building a very small city to become much more developed, but it follows with several impacts like waste and global warming. So I'm just curious, how do you respond to this issue? Are they truly a threat to the environment? And how be bright a technology that you mentioned before manage their waste? Is that clear?
Yes, I got it.
So I'm going to continue for the second question. This question, I address this question to Professor Chaya Birchwatch. So you are discussing on migration and global warming issue, including the rise of sea level. For me, it's also an interesting topic, especially when you presented an image, a land which part of India is sinking. So I'm curious how the government of India tackle this issue. Is there any programs to prevent people from moving or migrating? Since we know that the number of people migrating is hard to control. And then the next question to Dr. Barta Idiko. So you mentioned earlier about EU instruments in order to make sure their policy is running effectively. My question is about incentive-based instruments. So you already mentioned about that. What kind of incentive is it, and who gets the benefit of it? And lastly, this is the question to Dr. Ali Mahshar. You stated that environmental is basically an administrative problem that needs criminal law to enforce it. Does it mean that ultimum remedium principle is applied to all environmental cases? And since criminal law is your area of expertise, I would like to ask you about restorative justice system that we already chosen so far, do you think it is effective to tackle this problem? I think that's all my questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ibu Rizka. So you asked to all our speakers today. It's it's fair, yeah. So yeah, how about we go to Professor Hartini Sarifan first for to respond to
Dr. Irwati. Thank you, Ibu Rizka. I think it was a very interesting question. You are actually asking a question on smart city. Yep. And smart city is also part of the discussion. It's just that I did not incorporate it due to time. But you are absolutely right that in developing or in establishing a smart city, the use of sophisticated technology has an adverse effect. So the same way as when I presented just now that how artificial intelligence to a certain extent has an environmental impact. When we talk about the use of supercomputing in processing, in gathering, in processing, in storing data, because we are speaking about massive data. We just visualize when we watch Netflix and how Netflix can actually tailor-made to suggest what kind of movies you watch. So that kind of data is being gathered every day, every second, and these require that supercomputing power, which in turn would result in the use of excessive electricity and energy, which when we talk about energy, the emission of energy would definitely cause, thinning the ozone layer, and that would in turn cause, the issues such as global warming and whatnot. So yes, in a way, the use of sophisticated technology could to a certain extent has an impact on that, but there's a part here. But when we actually weigh the benefit and the problem offered by, I think someone, the benefit and the problem offers by this technology, we can agree that the technology could actually offer so many solutions to it. So what the researcher and so many professors in many jurisdictions, especially in developed countries, did is to find a way how to balance between the adoption of the sophisticated technology and the adverse impact or the adverse effect of such technology to the environment, especially when we talk about this issue of climate change and other related issues pertaining to environment. So some of the ways, due to time, I think there are many ways, but some of the ways, if I can actually share with you, is how they use the technology itself. So they use what they call stack architecture to combine supercomputing and to combine sophisticated technology with the traditional technology so as to minimize the level of intelligence of this technology. We have to remember, the more intelligent the technology is, it requires more energy and more electricity. So in order to balance that, researchers and professors, they come up with few ways, and one of the ways is to combine the sophisticated technology and the sort of traditional technology in order to minimize the use of supercomputing power to process and to store data. If they use, let's say, like everything is artificial intelligence, the risk will be very high. Another way is they actually work on what we call shared data or data exchange. So rather than having multiple data center, they agree to have limited data center, and they would actually share data in order to minimize the process of collecting data. The more data they collect, they would consume more energy, more electricity. So they actually agree to share data and data exchange so as to minimize the establishment or the consumption of energy and electricity. And another way that they have actually come up with what they call synthetic data, as well as data anonymity. So anonymous is one of the way they want to reduce the risk, particularly to address the issue of privacy. One of the challenges of smart city is privacy, because a lot of data would be integrated, will be collected, will be stored. So they have to come up with the policy, with the technology to minimize all this. So I think with this short time, I would briefly share with you those ways to balance between the use of sophisticated technology and the development of smart city. And I welcome you to email me, and we can have further discussion on that, Rizka.
Oh, thank you so much, Professor. Yeah, Bu Rizka, a very kind response from Professor Hartini Saripan to your question. So we go to Professor Chaya Birchwatch for the second question from Ibu Rizka.
Thank you for your question, Rizka. My response would be that currently Indian government is focused on the internally displaced persons. So we have, as you saw in the picture, the Lohachara Island, and people from Lohachara Island were permanently relocated to another places where they do not face the challenges of sea level rise. Now, this is one category of people. So this means that we have internally displaced persons who are being protected right now by the Indian government, although there is lack of a uniform policy or uniform national law, but we are on way to developing it. Now, the second category of people, which is the internationally displaced persons, meaning people coming from Bangladesh or people coming from any other country, they are not at all regulated or governed by any law in India. So they are considered irregular migrants, and there is a huge gap in policy or national legislation. And like most countries around the world, no nation wants to add to its own responsibility by bringing in refugees to its own country. So that is a burgeoning, increasing problem that, like a lot of other countries, India hasn't found a solution yet. But I will remain hopelessly optimistic to assuming that there may be future policies to protect people who are at the front line of suffering from sea level rise or disasters. I hope that answers your question, Rizka.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Chaya Birchwatch. And then the next question asked by Bu Rizka to Professor Ildiko was who got the benefits from the policy?
Yes, so thank you for your question. It is a very, very not only interesting but relevant question, I think, because it is in Europe very often a question of discussion. When we are talking about incentives, there are two ways of the addresses of how to address these incentives. I think that the better scenario is the direct funding, that when there is a direct EU fund and it is directly addressed to the city, for example, who implements the climate change program, for example, or research group who implements an innovative solution. This is the best scenario. In this case, it is more likely that the aim of the funding incentive can be reached and realized. For example, when the direct fund is received by a city, by a local government, in this case, the addresses will be first of all the companies who taking part, for example, in the implementation of an innovative application, for example. So the direct beneficial will be in this case the companies, and in the better case, the beneficiaries will be also the consumers and citizens who use these applications. So for example, in Amsterdam, we can see a good example for that, or in Helsinki, we can see a good example for that. The other way of these incentives is not to grant incentives to the cities or research groups or civil association as addresses, but to the national governments. There is in the European Union the so-called Structural and Developing Fund is a very large fund, very important in the developing of the European Union and implementing the policies of the European Union. But the Structural and Developing Funds never goes directly to the targeted beneficiaries, but always to the national governments. The national governments implement so-called operative programs, and in the framework of the operative programs, the amount of the fund will be distributed. And for example, in Hungary, there is a very big problem that the sharing of this fund is not effective enough, cannot be reached the aim which was formulated originally at the EU level. For example, building intermodal center in the cities. Building intermodal center was also very beneficial to fight against environmental pollution and climate change. In Hungary, it is there were many a very large amount from operational fund devoted to set up such centers. But it is the successful rate is very low. So in this case, it is much harder to find the beneficiaries of this fund. I'm always arguing for the EU direct funds. I think it can be more effective than funds that shared by the mediation of national operation funds. At least in Hungary, this is my experience.
Okay, thank you so much, Professor, for your response. And the last one, we will listen to the response from Dr. Ali. So it's about the application of, hello, Pak Ali.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, Ira. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Bu Ira, Dr. Ira. Okay, Bu Rizka, thank you for your question. Izinkan saya akan menjawab dalam bahasa Indonesia ya. Saya kira bahwa pertanyaan ini cukup indah dan cukup mengusik kita bahwa tadi pertanyaannya adalah terkait dengan soal apakah efektif penyelesaian terkait dengan restoratif justice ya terhadap lingkungan hidup ini. Jadi begini, bahwa sama-sama kita percaya ultimum remedium is a main principle recognized by nation ya. Jadi saya kira bahwa setiap negara itu semua percaya bahwa penyelesaian dengan hukum pidana itu didorong ke belakang. Jadi ultimum remedium. Tetapi kemudian kita coba kita lihat bagaimana dengan model di Indonesia terkait dengan lingkungan hidup. Lingkungan hidup, penyelesaian terkait dengan pidana, pelanggaran lingkungan hidup di Indonesia, apakah efektif jika kita arahkan ke restoratif justice? Pandangan saya ada dua, ya, ada dua. Jadi ada kalanya efektif, ada kalanya enggak. Karena memang model jenis pelanggaran lingkungan hidup itu tidak bisa semuanya diserahkan kepada restoratif justice. Misalnya saja, ini akan cocok terhadap sebuah tindak pidana yang berangkat dari pelanggaran-pelanggaran administratif. Oke, didorong untuk menuju ke restoratif justice. Saya setuju. Ya, misalnya soal izin, pelanggaran izin. Kan ada itu yang kemudian jika pelanggaran izin, lalu kemudian dia menimbulkan sebuah akibat, dan di situ bisa juga ada pidana. Nah, terkait dengan tindak pidana yang ini cocok dengan restoratif justice. Tetapi kalau itu terkait dengan misalnya limbah, pembuangan limbah yang kemudian di situ membahayakan kepada masyarakat, tidak cocok kalau diupayakan alternatif-alternatif lain. Ya harus hukum pidana dikedepankan. Jadi saya kira bahwa kalau ditanya apakah restoratif justice itu efektif dalam menyelesaikan ini, dalam hal-hal tertentu efektif, tetapi untuk hal-hal yang terkait dengan soal-soal nyawa manusia ini tidak efektif, harus hukum pidana maju. Saya kira itu, Dr. Ira. Thank you.
Thank you.
Terima kasih, Bapak.
Ya, Pak Ali. Please allow me to translate briefly from your answer. So Dr. Ali stated that whether the restorative justice is effective to apply to cases on environmental law cases, environmental cases. So he believes that when the act is on the criminal administrative, so it's effective. But if the act or the crime related to the human life, like it brings danger to human life, so it's more on apply to penal or criminal sanction. So that's the answer from Pak Ali. So ladies and gentlemen, our speakers for today. So thank you once again for the sharing valuable knowledge, for joining our seminar for today. So on behalf of the committee, I apologize for any inconvenience, or probably there are questions that we cannot discuss now. But we are looking to your present to our next year agenda on the ICILS seminar. So thank you so much once again. So Iman and Intan, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Irawati, for guiding the speaker session and question and answer. You did a very good job. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the conference, and we would like to extend our gratitude to the Rector of Universitas Negeri Semarang. the Dean of Faculty of Law, and all the invited speakers for the endless support. And thank you to all participants for the contribution and support on this conference.
And for your additional information, for participants that join the chamber presentation, we will start the chamber presentation tomorrow. For further information, we will send it through WhatsApp group. Let me repeat with bahasa. Bagi para peserta yang mengikuti sesi paralel, kita akan berjumpa besok pagi dan informasi selanjutnya akan langsung dikirimkan melalui WhatsApp group Anda semua. Thank you for spending time with us today. Don't forget to stay safe, stay healthy. See you tomorrow and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Rasio Rito Sani, Dr. Barta Ildiko for Bongari, Dr. Hartini, Prof. Hartini for Malaysia, and Profesor dari India, Profesor Cahya Birchwatch dari India, dan Dr. Ali Masar dari Universitas Negeri Semarang.
Terima kasih, Bu.
To the guests and the audience for attend this meeting today. Welcome to the 5th International Conference on Indonesia Legal Study 2022 with the theme Advancing Legal Discourse of Environmental Ethics and Political Ecology in the Contemporary Era. I am Professor Dr. Martita and staff in the Faculty of Law. Thank you very much and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sukses, Prof. Sukses, Prof. Jos.
Sukses, Pak Dr.
Terima
Ali.
kasih.
Maaf.
Ketemu besok.
Yeah.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you. Waalaikumsalam.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ali Masyar.
Iya, juga.
Thank you, Dr. Bala.
Thank you everyone for the opportunity.